Welcome back to the Y&R CBS Spoiler Today channel. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button right now and give this video a thumbs up. Because what we are about to break down is one of the most intense, most chilling confrontations this show has delivered in a very long time. Tessa Porter stumbled onto something she was never supposed to know, and now caught squarely in Phyllis Summers' crosshairs. The question is no longer whether this secret will explode, but who will be left standing when it does. The launch of Genoa City is rarely a peaceful place, but what unfolded in that dimly lit room recently crossed into genuinely frightening territory that nobody was fully prepared for. Tessa, through no deliberate act of her own, accidentally stumbled into a secret so significant, so volatile that Phyllis Summers herself was willing to cross lines that even she has rarely approached so openly. What follows was not just a heated argument or a sharp exchange of words between two women who know how to hold their own. It was a full scale confrontation soaked in threats, physical intimidation, barely contained rage, and the terrifying undercurrent of desperation from a woman who clearly feels her entire world threatening to come apart at the seams. And Tessa, warm, principled, deeply caring Tessa, now finds herself trapped at the absolute center of something far bigger and far darker than she ever bargained for when she walked into that room. The scene opens the way so many of the most dangerous moments in Genoa City do not with a dramatic entrance or a public spectacle, but quietly, privately in a space that feels deceptively contained. The launch lights cast long, heavy shadows across the walls, and the atmosphere carries that particular kind of charged stillness that only arrives when something is about to go terribly wrong. Tessa stood frozen in that silence, her pulse hammering in her ears, the weight of what she had just uncovered pressing down on her chest like an iron vice. And this is the detail that gets me every single time I think about it. She hadn't gone looking for this. She had not set out to play detective or dig up someone else's secrets. She had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong moment. And trouble, as it has always inevitably done in Genoa City, found her anyway, and now standing face to face with Phyllis, she understood in her bones just how dangerous that accidental knowledge had suddenly made her. The Phyllis standing across from her in that moment was not the sharp, strategic, endlessly calculating woman we are so used to watching dominate every room she enters. This version of Phyllis was different, and honestly more frightening because of it. Her eyes were burning with a volatile, barely restrained mixture of fury and desperation. Her entire body trembling not with weakness, but with the kind of barely leashed rage that tells you something deeply important is being threatened. You shouldn't have seen that, she said, her voice dropping low and sharp, each word sliced out with surgical precision, landing like glass against skin. I cannot overstate how chilling that opening line is. It is not an explanation. It is not an invitation to discuss or resolve anything. It is a warning delivered by someone who has already decided exactly how far she is willing to go. Tessa, to her enormous credit, did not immediately shatter. She took a step back, instinctively, physically, her mind racing to find an exit, a way to de-escalate before the entire situation slipped past the point of no return. Phyllis, I wasn't spying. She began, her voice fighting to hold steady under the pressure of the moment. It just happened. But whatever this is, we can figure it out without. She never got to finish because Phyllis was already moving. In a single sudden terrifying flash of movement, she crossed the distance between them and slammed her hand against the wall directly beside Tessa's head with a force that sent a crack of sound through the empty room. Imagine being on Tessa's side of that. Imagine the way your heart would stop, the way your entire body would react before your brain could even process what had just happened. That sound, sharp, sudden, deliberate, was not an accident, it was punctuation, a physical explanation, exclamation mark attached to the threat that followed immediately after. No, Phyllis snapped, her voice rising now. The carefully maintained control finally cracking at the edges. You don't get to figure this out, you don't get to decide anything. You saw something you were never supposed to see, and now you are going to forget it ever happened. Tessa looked into her eyes in that moment and searched, genuinely searched for even the smallest flicker of reason, the tiniest trace of that rational, calculated Phyllis who navigates every situation with such cold precision. She found none. Because this was not that Phyllis. This was panic dressed up in anger. This was a person backed so completely into a corner, with so much at stake, that the usual rules of engagement no longer applied. I can't just pretend, Tessa said quietly, even as her voice shook with the effort of holding herself together. People could get hurt, and oh, that was the wrong thing to say. Those 5 words hit something inside Phyllis, like a switch being flipped, and what came after was in some ways more frightening than the explosion that had preceded it. Her expression hardened instantly, her jaw tightening, and then the raging heat of her anger suddenly transformed into something cold and controlled and surgical. A calm descended over her that was infinitely more threatening than the shouting had been. People will get hurt, she said, her voice now eerily, disturbingly steady. If you open your mouth, that shift from volcanic fury to icy precision is the kind of thing that stays with you. Because screaming can be managed, reasoned with, outlasted, but that quiet, deliberate, crystalline certainty, that is genuinely terrifying. She leaned in closer, dropping her voice to something barely above a whisper, and delivered her threat with the slow deliberateness of someone who has absolute confidence in what they are saying. Listen to me very carefully, Tessa. If you tell anyone what you think you know, you are done. Your career, your life here, everything you have built gone. Tessa swallowed hard against the pounding of her own heart, and she understood in that moment that this was not a bluff. This was a promise embedded in every syllable, a certainty that Phyllis would follow through without a single moment of hesitation or regression, and yet somehow, from somewhere beneath that genuine fear, a flicker of defiance began to push back. You can't control everything, Tessa said, her voice barely more than a breath. Secrets like this, they don't stay buried. For one brief, startling instant, something cracked in Phyllis' expression, a flash of raw, genuine vulnerability, of a fear so deep it almost made her human again. But it disappeared as quickly as it had surfaced, swallowed back up by hardened resolve. Watch me, Phyllis replied, and then she grabbed Tessa's arm. I genuinely cannot believe she went there. This is the moment that crosses every line, her hand closing around Tessa's arm with a grip tight enough to hurt, her nails digging in as if the physical hold could somehow anchor her threat more firmly into reality. Tessa gasped, instinctively pulled against it, but Phyllis held firm. You think you are the best person to stumble onto something they shouldn't? She hissed, her face close enough that there was no escaping the intensity radiating off her. You have no idea what I'm capable of when I'm protecting what's mine. But here is where Tessa surprised even herself, because fear and anger are powerful companions, and both of them were surging through her now. This isn't protection. She shot back, her voice finding a strength it hadn't had moments before. This is desperation, and whatever you are hiding is already unraveling. Whatever you admit it or not that landed, you could see it land. Phyllis' grip tightened one final painful moment before she choked. Tessa backed hard enough to send her stumbling, releasing her with a force that felt like punctuation all over again. You don't know anything, Phyllis snapped, but the edge in her voice betrayed her. The crack was there now, visible, undeniable. Tessa steadied herself, her arms throbbing, her mind running faster than she could process. I won't be threatened into silence, she said. I want to sit with that for a moment, because saying those words in that room in that moment took real courage. Not when it could hurt people I care about. The silence that followed was suffocating in a way that physical noise never could be. Phyllis stared at her, all surface level calculation now, the rage driven deep and weaponized into something more controlled, more dangerous. Then you would better start caring about yourself a little more, she said finally, each word delivered low and slow and absolutely chilling. Because if you force my hand, I won't hesitate. When Phyllis eventually stepped back, composing herself with a visible, almost theatrical effort, smoothing her hair as though she could straighten the wreckage of the confrontation the same way her final instruction was delivered, with the finality of a closing door. This conversation never happened. You go back to your life, your music, your little world, and you forget what you saw. Tessa said nothing. She simply watched her, and in that silence, she saw something she had not expected to see, a woman unraveling beneath the crushing weight of her own choices. and a person in that state is no less dangerous. They are more. And if I don't, Tessa asked quietly. Phyllis paused at the doorway, her back turned, and for one suspended moment it seemed as though she might simply walk away without answering. But then she turned her head just enough for her voice to carry, and said, "Then you will wish you had," before walking out and letting the door click shut behind her with a finality that echoed louder than any shout possibly could. What followed in the aftermath of the confrontation is where the story becomes even richer and more complex. Tessa stood alone in that room long after the door closed, the throbbing in her arm a constant physical reminder that what had just happened was entirely real. Slowly, beneath the fear, something clearer began to surface. Phyllis had been terrified, and the terror meant one devastating thing. Whatever the secret was, it was worse than anyone had yet imagined. Across town, Phyllis stormed into her suit and paced like something caged and cornered. Furious at herself, furious at the situation, staring at her own reflection in the mirror and struggling to recognize the wildness looking back at her. She had been careful, meticulous, every risk calculated and weighed. And yet Tessa, of all people, had found her way in. She grabbed her phone, fingers hovering, mind already pivoting toward damage control, already constructing the architecture of a plan that would shift attention and redirect suspicion before everything collapsed around her. Meanwhile, Tessa stepped into air that felt deceptively normal. Cars passing, laughter in the distance, the city moving as though nothing had shifted. And she knew she could not rush this. Going public without a plan could destroy more than just herself. She needed to think. She needed to be smart. She needed to figure out who, in a city where trust is the rarest and most fragile currency there is, she could actually rely on. And this is where everything truly changes. Because what we just witnessed isn't just another secret in Genoa City. It's the moment a line gets crossed that can't be uncrossed. Because when fear turns into control and control turns into threats, you have to ask yourself how far is too far and who pays the price when that line disappears. Personally, I don't think this is just about Phyllis protecting herself anymore. I think this is about survival at any cost. And that kind of mindedness never ends quietly. You can already feel it building, can't you? That tension, that sense that one wrong move could bring everything crashing down. And when it does, it won't just hit one person. It will ripple through everyone connected to them. And Tessa, she's standing right at the center of it, caught between doing what's right and staying safe. And let's be honest, in a place like this, can anyone really do both? So, the real question is, what would you do in her position? Stay silent and protect yourself or risk everything to expose the truth? Even if it destroys lives, and here's something even more chilling to think about. If Phil is already this desperate, what happens when she starts losing control for real? What is the actual capable of? Because I have a feeling this isn't just leading to fallout. It's leading to a full-blown explosion, one that could expose secrets no one is ready to face. And maybe, just maybe, someone unexpected will take the fall. And the scariest part, we're only seeing the beginning, not the end. So, stay close to the story because the next move might change everything.